Hey, what's up guys? It's Christian with the Interactive Immersive HQ. I got a tutorial today where we're going to build this carousel where we're going to integrate motion triggers to create swipes and some other fun stuff. So let's get started. We're first going to plop down some different geometry that we can build our carousel with. I'm going to do a sphere, a box, and a torus. And each of those we're going to connect to a geo, then hook up a camera. Very standard 3D rendering setup. Have a render at the end. And an easy way for us to have some good materials to use is we're just going to use the substance top over here and copy and paste it 3 times, and then plop down some PBR materials for each of our geometries. And after organizing a little bit, we're going to drag and drop our substance materials into our PBR materials and go into each one of these and just change them so that we don't have the same material on each one of them. The concrete, and then the metal. Our next step is getting it such that our geometry is going to be spaced out. And so we're going to look for a pattern chop and go into here and create a ramp. And our length is going to be the length of the geometries we have. So that's 3. And then we're going to connect that to a null. And we want to connect that to a limit over here. And I'm going to turn that on to loop. And we want to go from 0 to 3. And we're going to put a math in between this because we're going to be moving these along. And we want it such that they're moving at different increments. So I'm going to then create a constant chop, pop that into a null as well, just for good practice, and connect this and do combine chops. We're going to add them. So if I go ahead and I put 1 here, we're going to go up 1, and it's going to go from 1 to 2. We go to 3 or 2, 2 to 3, and we can see that our limit is doing its job over here, where it's capping off the amount that we have so that we can accurately map the values onto the correct positions on our carousel. Now, if we look at our range here, we're going from 0 to 1 to begin with, then we're going to add 1. So we're going to get 2 to 3 or 1 to 2, and then it's going to cap off at 3. So it will never reach 3. But what we want it to do is one of the geometries to be 0, one of the geometries to be 1, and one of the geometries to be 2. So we're actually going to do a range of 0 to 2 over here. So we can see that our pattern is going up. We're getting 0, then 1, then 2 over here. We're going to add 1, and we'll never hit 3. Now finally, I'll hook this up to a math, and then we can then hook it up to a trim, and then copy that 3 times. And we're going to do absolute for all of them. And this will be our first index. This is going to be our second index. So that'll be at start of 1 because we're indexing starting with 0. And then that's 2 over here. And then this math over here is helpful because we can now change our range from 0 to 2 to let's say -3 to 3 or something. And we can see that these are our X placements for all of our different geometries. So go ahead and place this into our X on all of our different geometries. And we can see if we move the constant, we're getting, and if I even put 4, we're always going to get an object in view. Let's put an environment light down to light our scene. I'm going to pop down a constant and just pull that in so that it's some ambient light. We have to add tangents onto all of our different geometries for the normal maps. So that's going to be attribute create. So now that we popped in some attribute creates on these, I'm not getting any warning, everything's happy. Just for the sake of making things nice, I'm going to put on some transforms. And that sphere is looking a little too big. So let's drop it down to like 0.5. It looks like the torus is a little bit too big as well. So let's drop that down like 0.5 as well. So our carousel is pretty much good to go. If we change this, we're going to get different geometries, but it doesn't look super nice. So one way to make it, give it a little razzle dazzle, it'll do something weird when I plop down a lag in between here so that it lags between our different changes, is we have to turn on lag per sample, even though it's a single sample channel. I'm not really sure why that is, but now if we go ahead and increment this by 1, it'll animate between these guys. So we can go ahead and tweak this to our liking and add some overshoot. Could add a longer lag value. Tweak this to your heart's content. It's all about the look and feel of what we want to make. If we want to make it look nice at the end, make it look good and pretty, put a little ramp on the end, make it circular, do hold, make sure that our output is not multiply, it's going to be over, and we want to swap the order. At the phase, we'll make the outside a little bit darker. Go ahead and swap those. So we'll make the outside darker, make the object pop a little bit more. And bada bing, bada boom, that's our carousel. So the visual side of our project is ready to go, locked and loaded. And we can feel free to use and explore any of the different motion sensors that are available and offer for TouchDesigner. We can use a Connect, we can use Elite Motion. For our purposes, to be super straightforward, I'm going to use MediaPipe over here. Shout out you guys. It's awesome. It'll work on Mac, Windows. Once you download it, you'll get these external toxes, and we're going to go ahead and plop down a MediaPipe. Take a couple seconds, and then a hand tracking as well. I'll go into the MediaPipe and turn off all these different flags just because it's going to tank our computer's performance. We're going to look for the hands output and connect it to our hand tracking. And then we also have to connect our camera. So once it's done loading, you can see little old me in this little camera output. And we can see there's a little red flag still going. If I just toggle that, it'll go away. And if I raise my hand, you can see that we have some different control points that it's registering my hands. The natural jumping off point for any sort of hand tracking is we're going to go for swipes. So we can see that we have an output that's the normalized data. And if I zoom in, we can see all these different little control points. I'm going to output this to a select, not a serial. Drop down a select, and I'm going to grab the first hand. Give this a little bit more. And I see that we have an index finger pip right here, but we also should have index finger tip as well. So if I go and add on to this finger underscore tip and end this with an asterisk, we should get our X, Y, and Z position right over here. And if I move this across the screen, we can see. And this is normalized. It's going to be from 0 to 1. Now, if I want to actually use this and see where it is lying on the actual screen that we have, I can go ahead and plop down a circle. I've gone ahead and reduced our circle. I'm going to take out the alpha, and I'm going to create our border, place this with a white, and then we want to go ahead and use our X into the center X and our Y over here as well. And we can see once I wave my hand in front of it, it shoots off the screen, and it's because 0, 0 is in the middle of the screen, and so we have to minus 0.5 on both the X and the Y, and then we'll accurately map these. So from here, we have two different tacks that we can create swipes. There's the swipes that are more straightforward, where a certain part of the screen, if I put my hand over to it, then it's going to trigger our carousel to move over in either the right or left direction. Or we can do swipes based on velocity and taking the slope chop. I'm going to show the simpler version right now. And if we go and take a select, we're going to take our X, and if I put this into a logic chop, create another one as well, one of them is going to be our right swipe and one of them are going to be our left swipe. So our X position is going from 0 to 1. And so we're going to take and put off when outside bounds. And so if we're on the right side of the screen, we're going to be 0.8, let's say. And this one as well, we're going to be right around the same sort of thresholding, right? Is if you're far on the left side, you're going to go left. If you're far on the right side, you're going to go right. So if I take my hand, if I go all the way to the left, then it's going to go over there. If I go all the way to the right. So now that we have our two triggers, we need a way to increment our index values over here. And one way we can do that is hooking up our chops to our chop executes. We're going to go ahead and turn off value change, and we're going to turn on off to on. And our op, our Python expression, is going to be constant 1. And it's going to be .par.const 0 value. And with this expression over here, because this is a right swipe, I want all the objects to move 1 in the right direction. So that's going to be plus equals 1. And we're going to go and copy paste this guy and drag our other one over here. But we need to make sure that we're actually going to be decrementing 1 instead. So if I see, now we get it so that I'm moving my cursor, I'm moving my hand over here, and we can reliably trigger our carousel movement by moving our hand. It's almost like using hand tracking as a cursor in and of itself. So if you'll notice in your own build of this or mine, you'll get sometimes sporadic results where it'll fire twice or one side will fire at the same time as another. I just did that right now. And one way we can account for this is by debouncing the firing of our scripts. And I'm going to put down a timer over here. I'm going to turn off my background top so you guys can see. And I'm going to create, it's going to be a small length of, say, like 0.2 seconds, or maybe we even do 0.5 seconds. And I'm going to initialize it and change this on done to also initialize. And what we want is for whenever we fire on a swipe, for this to fire itself and make it so that any other subsequent firings or triggers don't happen in that sort of interim time. Then we're going to go and write in our script over here, if op timer 1, and then I'm going to access the ready variable over here, and the ready variable is going to be 1. Then we want this to fire. And the same thing is true for our other callback over here. And we also want our timer then to start. And that's going to be op timer1.par.start.pulse. So now if we see whenever we trigger, it's going to start our timer. So our next way of doing swipes is the velocity based approach. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take our X position over here and we're going to put that into a slope chop. And then we're going to do the same setup as our other one, as our positional based swipes, except the main difference is when we do our left and right is if we're taking our hand and we're going from 0 to 1, we're going to be increasing. So that's actually going to be, we're going to have an upper bounds. So I'm going to do, let's say 0.8, and I'm going to put an upper bound of like 100. It's never going to reach that high. And then if I go and do the same thing over here, and I do instead negative 0.8 to negative 100, we're going to get different firings. And if we go ahead and hook these up, this is going to be our right swipe, and this is going to be our left swipe. So now we see we can move in the middle of the screen instead, but it's a little bit more finicky, I'd say sometimes. And so this is something that you have to kind of zone in. Maybe we're thinking, oh, it's a little bit, we go ahead and plop down a constant chop, and let's put this at like 1.5. And we're going to drag this into here. I'll do the parameter. And we want to drag that on into here. And the main difference is we want to actually make this negative over here. And so now we have a way to externalize and sort of zone in how sensitive we want this to be. We can see, and I zoom in. But this is really highly dependent on how good your sensing system is. If it's, getting data every so often, if there's little lags and things like that, you might have to put in a filter chop, which you're going to be introducing lag. You're going to be introducing. So with the default Gaussian filter over here, I found that 0.25, where it's, 0.25 in the positive direction for the right swipe and then negative 0.25 for the left swipe. It works pretty well, but then you can already see that there's a little bit of a lag. If I move, then it's not super responsive. And that's going to be the challenge when you're working with sensors like these, is you want something that feels good, but there's not a lot of latency into the system. So now that we've explored two different ways of swiping, we've conceptually covered positional based gestures or positional based motion triggers, speed based motion triggers, but on offer with a library like MediaPipe, we actually have gestural based triggers as well. And if we go over to our hand tracking comp, I pull this gesture chop out, I can see that we can use different gestures like open palm, closed fist, pointing up, thumb down. And what I want to do is, instead of using H1 for controlling the carousel, I'm actually going to use H2 to control the substance PBR material. So I'm going to pull out this select. We're going to put H2 closed fist. So I can even just do closed over here. We'll pull out a logic over here. And we're going to do off when outside of bounds, just like we did with positional and speed. And we're going to do like 0.7, let's say. Now, if we plop down a constant chop, if I make 3 different inputs, these can each stand for the substance materials over here. And in this graph dropdown, we can see that the pattern of inputs are actually just graph and then the index of whatever the dropdown is. And so we can increment these, make it such that do null. And then I'm going to do, in a Python expression, graph in quotes plus op null 6. And we want to do the first one. And importantly, we want to make sure that this is an int, because TouchDesigner or Python will type check it into whatever the value is dot and have a decimal. And we also want to create that and typecast that into a string as well. And then also we want to click this flag over here to make sure that it knows that this is a Python expression. And we can see that the first input over here, so chan 1, so we'll just say substance 1 or substance 0 is our value over here. If we go and it's controlling this sphere over here, so if we put it into 2, now I can change the material on this guy. And likewise, we can put that into all of our substance shops over here. Importantly, you also have to know that this index value over here is referencing what channel is over here. So for the second substance, we actually have to make it such that this index is 1, and then for this third one, this has to now be 2. Now, rather than using a chop execute, what we can do instead is actually pull out and plop down a count chop. And if I put both hands up, it's going to be counting the times that I pull this gesture. And we can then put down a math chop. And then pull this in and combine chops as add. And we want to make sure that we also limit the amount of inputs we can have. Otherwise, our substance hops are going to be angry with us. So we can loop them. We can go from 0 to 3 as well. And from there, we can see that now we have our H1 over here, which is going to be controlling our swiping. And then my hand on the right is going to be controlling the different substances or the different materials that are applied to those substances. So from there, we've covered our 3 different approaches to motion tracking. We can use position, we can use speed, and we can use gesture as well. And that's just really scratching the surface. There's so many other things that we can delve into, but getting started, this is things that will keep you busy for quite a long time.
Hey folks, thanks for watching. If you like our YouTube content, I highly recommend you check out the Interactive and Immersive HQ Pro. The HQ Pro is the only comprehensive educational resource and community for immersive design, TouchDesigner, and creative tech pros. In the HQ Pro trainings, we cover almost any topic you can think of, and we go way more in depth than we do in our YouTube tutorials. We have a private group where Matthew Reagan, myself, and our other industry veteran and pioneer teachers answer your questions every single day. If that sounds cool, click the link in the description to learn more. And if you enjoyed this video, hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe for more free TouchDesigner and immersive content.